Hello, I'm Nate, aka B-Tier Mutineer, and today I want to share with you a new indie game as part of my indie highlights. The King is Watching. So far, I've mostly talked about RPGs on my channel, so you may not know this, but I'm also a huge enjoyer of strategy games, city builders, this kind of stuff. I loved playing RTS games like Warcraft 3, Age of Empires 2, and Age of Mythology in my childhood, and then that translated later into a love for city builders and all sorts of interesting blends of strategy and resource management. Anyway, the reason I mentioned my love for all of these types of games is that The King is Watching is a weird mix of a bunch of these that somehow works out to be more than the sum of its parts. It's officially described as a roguelite kingdom builder on its Steam page, but I think it's far more interesting than that. We have to talk about the gameplay right away to explain what's so cool about The King is Watching. It has this unique feature of your character, the king, having to focus his gaze on his subjects because otherwise they're extremely lazy. They won't work unless under direct supervision. This is a fascinating concept that has you constantly shifting your gaze, aka a group of tiles that you can upgrade throughout your run, in order to produce resources, obtain structures and bonuses, and train the troops that your kingdom needs to protect itself from waves of enemies. As a quick note, I don't think I can make the gameplay look fun on screen since it is a strategy game, and on top of that I'm not a skilled player, so I take a long time to figure things out and whatnot. But as a counterpoint to that, on the very first day this came out, I bought it and played it all day other than taking a few mandatory breaks for fitness and survival purposes. So while it may not look like the gameplay is all that, trust me, it is. Before we get further into the video, I'll take a moment to say a special thank you to my members who help keep this channel running. I'd really appreciate it if you'd consider joining as a member to support me and unlock perks like early access to videos. Joining is very much appreciated, but not required. I am always thankful, even if you just take the time to like the video and maybe leave a comment. Back to The King is Watching. So what exactly do you do other than move your focus around on different tiles to make your people work? You're also in charge of placing down structures and resource nodes, training troops, obtaining spells, and choosing various upgrades for your structures, soldiers, as well as certain artifacts, giving you special bonuses. Near the beginning of each run, after defeating some very weak enemies, you get something called a prophecy, which allows you to choose which enemy waves will attack your kingdom and in what order. You can pick only the bare minimum enemies if you feel like you're weak, but every enemy group gives you rewards once defeated. So if you add optional groups to the enemy wave, you can get a lot of very attractive bonuses. So it's a balance between greed and cowardice that I almost always lose to greed and end up having my castle destroyed by an elite enemy wave that I absolutely did not have to put in there. I think it's fun that a lot of the time when you fail, it's something that you did to yourself and could have just not done. Even though the game has a lot of RNG due to being a roguelite, 90% of the time if you mess something up and get your castle destroyed, it was a poor choice of troops or the aforementioned getting greedy and adding too many enemy groups. The rest of the 10% I think comes down to higher difficulties being genuinely hard to beat without getting at least a bit into the upgrade tree, though that may just be me and my subpar skills. I'm sure more savvy strategy players could potentially beat even higher difficulties with little to no upgrades. The goal of each run is to survive a certain number of enemy attacks which come in waves, with a final wave containing a boss creature. In what I think is normal difficulty, or at least a baseline, after completing the tutorial and 2 other easier ascension levels, there's a total of 3 bosses you have to survive. Easier said than done. The maximum that I've personally managed so far is 2 bosses, though I've been getting steadily better both in terms of my understanding of the game as well as the roguelite progression that you get to access between runs. Speaking of progression, it's fairly standard so far, but I enjoy the flavor of it, the style. There's this creepy eye that follows your cursor around when you decide on which upgrades to get for your kingdom with green denarii, a currency you earn by completing runs. Even failed runs still give you something, of course, as tends to be the case with roguelites. One of the upgrades you get for your kingdom is a council of advisors, which you can choose to bring with you on a run. Each advisor gives you some kind of bonus, either starting the game with some extra resources or structures, a bonus tile, regular denarii for purchasing things in the shop, Or you can also get more generally applicable bonuses throughout the entire run, like faster resource production, cheaper and faster training troops, that kind of thing. These advisors are the variable bonuses you can adjust for your runs once you unlock them, so you'll likely fiddle around with them to find out which of them give you bonuses that work with your playstyle, your chosen king, which work better against certain bosses, and so on. I always like having more choices because that means I can find a build that I find comfortable and fun to play. As I said earlier though, I haven't gotten super far yet in the ascensions and areas since I haven't managed to beat the third boss in the village yet. But I've already played over 15 hours at the time of writing the script, and a lot more by the time the video will come out, and I've enjoyed every single minute. I'm genuinely impressed with the depth you can find in the game's systems. There are so many options for builds already, and I'm sure all of them are viable once you can figure out what synergizes well. I've kind of been all over the place with my runs so far, though I've tried working towards a type of build. I'm not entirely sure you can be super focused on one particular build at first. There's a lot of randomness in the rewards you're offered when defeating enemy waves, in the shop, as well as in random events that add a bit of narrative flavor. Maybe later on you can unlock certain kings or advisors that work well with a particular build, or else get some rerolls so you can more easily find a certain building or resource you're looking for. For now, it feels a bit too random, which could end up being a negative if you don't get something to help you limit the randomness, but it's too early to tell. Plus, the devs might add options like disabling certain upgrades, extra rerolls, or other artifacts or bonuses that will help you with this. As it stands, it still feels great to play, but I assume that at higher levels of play you'd want something that helps you focus in on a build. Moving on to the visuals, the game has a pixel art style, but despite me usually not enjoying pixel art, I find the visuals of The King is Watching very charming. I think it's more about what the art is depicting, and so when you have these creepy eyes, the animated portraits of the kings looking funky and doing funny stuff, like King Baldwin putting a sword through his ears as if he's scratching the inside of his empty head, when you've got all of these weird and less common stuff depicted by pixel art, it doesn't really matter it's pixel art anymore. I certainly don't register it as such because I'm too busy admiring how cool something is, or else focused on the gameplay. Obviously this will be up to your personal taste, but as someone who stays away from most pixel art games, I personally like the vibe the visuals give this game, and I think anything other than pixel art wouldn't have worked as well with this specific tone the game has. When it comes to the sound design, the effects are particularly satisfying. Some of the battle noises from the creatures sound very similar to the ones from older games, which for me is extra nice because there's a bit of nostalgia being activated whenever I hear the death rattles of the goblins my soldiers are defeating. But all the other sound effects are very nice too. Everything from placing new structures or a resource being depleted, spell effects. My favorite so far is a fireworks spell because it also has pretty fireworks you can look at. The music is a bit repetitive, but nonetheless sounds good. Not sure if the devs are planning on adding more music, or maybe if certain tracks are linked to certain areas, and I've just experienced the village music so far. But it's definitely good quality and fits the game's tone, even if it's fairly limited, at least in my experience of the village area. Now, I'll mention a few things that I didn't have enough to talk about to merit their own section. I would have usually talked about the game's performance, but I have had literally 0 issues. No crashes, no freezes, no major bugs that I could notice. A super well-polished game that runs well and feels good to play. Of course, this may be variable based on your PC specs, but for me, it ran smooth like butter. I also usually talk about the game's story or world building. As this is a strategy game, it's more so focused on the actual gameplay, but there are narrative elements, and there's definitely some lore that hints at the world of The King is Watching. It's just that they're scattered here and there between a few beautifully animated cutscenes, random events during a run with choices that give you different rewards and possibly negative consequences, the different types of troops you have access to, from peasants to druids to bumblebees and gnomes and flower dragons, flour as in the thing made by milling grains, and many more. The different kings and advisors you can unlock have a certain flavor to them that adds to the overall sense of world building, so while I can't say there's a story per se, at least none that I've seen yet, I feel perfectly satisfied with the narrative flavor I'm getting. In conclusion, I love The King is Watching, and I hope that at least some of you might be interested in giving it a try after watching this video. I know this is a fairly niche game since it's a blend of genres, it's fairly difficult, and has a pixel art style. It won't be to everyone's tastes, but I think it does something very interesting in the strategy city builder genre, and it's made by a very small team too, which I think is something that's always worth supporting. By the way, if you want to try out the game, there's still a free demo up on Steam at the time of posting this. In any case, I hope you enjoyed this indie highlight video about The King is Watching. If you're looking forward to more videos about games I like, remember to subscribe, and leave a like and comment while you're at it too. They really help. This has been B Tier Mutineer. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.